So good morning, everybody. My name is Daishi, and I'm a student teacher at the Village Zendo, um, speaking to you from Boston, Massachusetts, where I live and have for a few years, but have been a long time lover of the Village Zendo from various distances, both from New York and from a distance. Um, I hope everyone's doing well. I hope everyone's doing well. And it's good to see, as usual, familiar faces and new faces. Um, it's always a bit exciting to see who's going to pop on the screen who I might recognize. And really wonderful to see new people coming into the Village Zendo ecosystem. So thank you for joining us, whether this is your first time or you've been on this rodeo for a while. I just came back from a 3 day course. Um, uh, I think the title is called Interpersonal Dynamics, and it was a course about looking at interpersonal dynamics and small group behavior. Um, And the intention is to kind of develop more of a personal understanding on how we impact others. Um, there are a few readings to be part of the course, a little preparatory work, but the bulk of the experience is something they call labs, in which you're paired with a group of people that you don't know, and you're invited to sit in a circle for many hours a day with a kind of vacuum of leadership. Um, there are facilitators there, but I would call it quite light touch facilitation. And you're really offered kind of three prompts on how to engage with the group. Uh, One is around self-disclosure, whatever that means for you, bringing yourself into the room as fully as you feel is helpful for the group and for yourself to be seen and to be heard. Um, and you're invited to give feedback. You're invited to give feedback on the impact that things said, things done, things not done, things observed are having on you. And and the third orientation is to take risks. And in this context, risks means basically to consider more self-disclosure and to consider more feedback. Um, and and yeah, over the course of, in this case, it was 3 days, you sit with these people you've not met before, very reminiscent of a session, as a shared reference point for this group, and you're with each other and you kind of see what arises. Um, and for me, one of the wonderful things about it is you speak more than you do it at the Zendo, or at least within the session format. I could sing the praises of intentional silence, probably for the next 45 minutes, but I'm also really like curious for myself about my ability to say things. Um, I'd like to be able to say things, not necessarily more, but in a way that feels truer to my experience, that might be more helpful, whatever that means exactly. and is a little more free, just but not sloppy or not too sloppy. Um, and so this was a great opportunity for me to practice that, much like, shall I say, this talk is also. And you're in this group, and you're also invited to do four things: to notice, um, to name, uh, to nurture. Uh, that is, if you see something, if you notice something, and you name something that you think is beneficial, um, to flame that fire. Uh, and another invitation is to nudge. Um, if you have a feeling that something might be helpful, um, if something is needing a bit of a push, a compassionate push to do that, to offer that to the group. And then the final one is to navigate, to kind of think about clearing away obstacles. So I will say, obviously, it's still very fresh. I arrived like late-ish last night, um, but knew it was something I wanted to share with this group. Um, Primarily around this aspect of giving and receiving feedback. Um, it was very helpful, not always pleasant, but to just get feedback on um, the impact I had in a group just by sitting there or by saying something. It was also really interesting for me to have encouragement to offer feedback on other people's impact, the really wonderful impact people have on me. Just to say that, to make sure it's known and not just assume it's known because it's felt internally, that the expression of that appreciation can really then have a positive feedback loop for these interpersonal dynamics and these group dynamics. Um, to see the ways that our training of a lowered gaze, for example, um, the intention behind a lowered gaze in session, as I understand it, is to protect the container. And what do I mean by the container? I mean the container of the very precious and unique opportunity to find solitude amidst togetherness. Um, but in other places, a lowered gaze might feel like you're dropping them. You're not meeting what's been expressed by them. Is one right? Is one wrong? Does that mean you should change anything? Um, but to recognize that we're always having these impacts, like to bring that into relief, uh, to move into group, to move into a classroom, a subway car, um, just noting how other people are impacting you, and also to have some kind of openness to how we might be impacting other people. It was beautiful too, I have to say, much like a session, I really appreciated kind of the musicality of the group. We have literal extra bells, no whistles that I'm aware of, but drums to to communicate with one another and to hold the group. Um, but it was really nice to name and to notice and to share how a kind of orchestra formed from this group with, kind of quick, snappy tempos every once in a while, um, sometimes some cacophony, volume intensity, um, cadence, um, and again, just noticing, for example, when we could hold silence, I noticed that often that preceded someone saying something that was right on the edge of a big risk for them. Um, we had several times in this group of strangers where people shared things into the group that they had never said um, to any other person before. I wouldn't, I wouldn't claim to wrap a formula around what created that kind of causes and conditions for safety and bravery, but it did happen, and I did notice that um, there was a lot of generous space for this tender thought to emerge into the group that wasn't piled on with another thought, a great insight. People really were able to hold the silence, and and I got some feedback that I contributed to that, and I want to give the feedback to you all that I think we do that quite well. Um, and it's not nothing. It's not nothing to be able to hold silence for someone else. Um, another another dynamic that emerged, and I felt it at the Zendo and in my Zen practice, and I wonder how you all do too. In some of our koans, it's even named explicitly, but this idea of being inside the group and being outside of the group came up. What is inside the group and what is outside the group? Um, Came up in different ways, people feeling, naming and noticing, feeling excluded, uh, um, and then the various emotions that come up with that, memories that come up with that. Um, but but another dynamic of inside and outside that came up that I hear coming up a lot at the Zendo, and I certainly feel it too, is yes, there's kind of, am I on the inside group or the outside group? Am I doing my Zen practice right or wrong? But another way of thinking about inside and outside the group is like what's outside the temple gate. So um, and how or if it's necessary to bring in what's outside the temple gate. Um, I suppose I view a little bit like what we just did over the last few days as a kind of pop-up temple, right? We found a piece of space. we we arranged it thoughtfully. Mm, they weren't the same named roles, but there was definitely, let's call it a jikido in the room. Um, we were all kind of Dharma talkers at different points. Um, monitors. People kind of organically took up the monitor position. Mm, and, I think a big part of our temple isn't just the bells and the beautiful altars and the named positions, but there's some kind of um, implicit and explicit intention that makes it a special, let's call it space. Um, and and we closed around that, the doors literally close. Session has begun. This learning lab has begun, and kind of made a commitment to just work like in our bodies and with one another and in this group, and and it can feel like we're leaving a whole lot out, and it's can be challenging to figure out if it's skillful to bring any more in. um, I think it's a trope, right? That there is no inside and outside. um, and yet the door is closed, right? And yet um, people were wondering if they should go to various marches yesterday. Um, I was wondering if I should be with my family. Um, so we all have these callings outside of this space. Um, and it does create a kind of safety. It does create a kind of safety. It can also create a kind of feelings of exclusivity, um, shame, guilt. Um, these are all feelings I felt, and also were named in the group. And I'm curious in this non-dialogue space how that's landing for you, but I've heard it come up a number of times. Kind of, what's the connection between this little practice of ours and the great big world? Um, and it's different for everybody. So to feel, again, get feedback on the impact of that structure on different people. Um, I'm noticing now, being with you all, um, that I came home after being away for like 3 days or 4 days actually, and then kind of scurried off to sit with you all and give this talk. And so for me, it's like um, a mix of anticipatory excitement to do some Father's Day activities later, um, and some guilt um, around just being pulled in multiple directions. That's kind of a story I tell myself these days. Uh, but I also notice a kind of flavor of determination to be here because I am here with you and with myself. Um, and a kind of it's I don't want to make too much of it, but a kind of great doubt. It feels important. It feels important to do this work and to be here with you. Um, Wholeheartedly unsure what the impact is on any of you, let alone the bigger world. But a kind of faith, um, an experience, a set of experiences and faith that that it's good to be here, wherever you are. Um, and I want to come back to that. Each morning, we opened with a poem to kind of set the stage, which I thought was a nice form for kind of orienting the group. Uh, and I'm gonna read you one of the poems that came up. It's it's a it's a long poem, so I'm actually only going to read it once, which I know kind of breaks with the form of how we do poems here. But that's I think that's okay. That if that has an impact on you of feeling like, well, frustrated with me, why did you only read it once? I do apologize for that. But also if it makes you feel like, I missed something, like just that's okay. Like I kind of know that's a real possibility, but I think you'll get the gist. It's called The Invitation by Araya, and it goes, it doesn't interest me what you do for a living. I want to know what you ache for and if you dare to dream of meeting your heart's longing. It doesn't interest me how old you are. I want to know if you will risk looking like a fool for love, for your dream, for the adventure of being alive. It doesn't interest me what planets are squaring your moon. I want to know if you have touched the center of your own sorrow, if you have been opened by life's betrayals or have become shriveled and closed from fear of further pain. I want to know if you can sit with pain, mine or your own, without moving to hide it or fade it or fix it. I want to know if you can be with joy, mine or your own, if you can dance with wildness and let the ecstasy fill you to the tips of your fingers and toes without cautioning us to be careful, be realistic, remember the limitations of being human. It doesn't interest me if the story you are telling me is true. I want to know if you can disappoint another to be true to yourself, if you can bear the accusation of betrayal and not betray your own soul, if you can be faithless and therefore trustworthy. I want to know if you can see beauty even when it is not pretty every day, and if you can source your own life from its presence. I want to know if you can live with failure, yours and mine, and still stand at the edge of the lake and shout to the silver of the full moon, yes. It doesn't interest me to know where you live or how much money you have. I want to know if you can get up after the night of grief and despair, weary and bruised to the bone, and do what needs to be done to feed the children. It doesn't interest me who you know or how you came to be here. I want to know if you will stand in the center of the fire with me and not shrink back. It doesn't interest me where or what or with whom you have studied. I want to know what sustains you from the inside when all else falls away. I want to know if you can be alone with yourself and if you truly like the company you keep in the empty moments. So, uh, the first time I heard this, I was just let it wash over me and I really appreciated it. I felt like it was an invitation to kind of stop this relentless chatter of what should be or um, what comes next, and to come back to just this kind of stunning potential of sitting with mystery of the self, and to not know for a moment who I am and who you are, and to be curious, to be more curious, to be uh, curious more deeply. Um, and I took it as an invitation uh, to give to give oneself and those we encounter grace, um, and to encourage ourselves to be just again wholeheartedly curious about our lives and to listen generously, to loosen our grips on all the scripts we have again about how we should feel and what we should say. Um, and our group did that. It was quite remarkable. Um, to see this safety and trust built across a number of very challenging and hard to navigate lines of difference around race, class, age, gender. Mm. And we offered a lot of validation and sincere kindness. And I got to experience another angle of appreciation for my Zen practice, in the particular, the ability to just sit and hold space, um, non-reactively, for a large range of intense and challenging emotions. Don't I'd encourage you not to underestimate the impact that may have on someone you are sitting with, maybe yourself. Um, I do think that there's a risk to that poem and to this invitation, uh, and to Zen practice, which is to think that the invitation is to anything other than this. Um, Not to pick on the poem, but in the poem, there's a lot of things we ought not be interested in. It doesn't interest me what you do for a living, or how old you are, or, well, what planets are squaring your moon. I continue not to be particularly interested in, but you get the point. It starts to exclude things, right? Differentiate uh, sincere from superficial, absolute from relative. And this is a real gift and a real invitation of Zen practice, which is that it is all of interest. Um, a monk asked Tongshan, "What is Buddha? What what is of greatest interest?" No, really. I really want to know what is of greatest interest. Please tell me, what is awakening? I really want to know. It's not a it's not a light question. What is Buddha? And Tongshan replied, 3 pounds of hemp. I'm so curious how that's impacting you, how that's landing for you. Um, that whatever, wherever, and whenever is Buddha. Buddha? It's I think it's hard to believe, and perhaps even harder to practice, but that the mundane, the gesture, um, the thank you card, the brave disclosure, the request for feedback, um, is Buddha, is our practice, and of great import, and that we don't actually have to uh, rip off all of our clothes and stand at the lake's edge and howl at the moonlight, um, although you can. Uh, but you can boldly kind of share the impact someone has had on you, or ask to know the impact you have had on someone. You can hold the door and you can pay attention. Mm. There's a shorter verse, and that I will read twice, that I think points to this in another nice way, which is from Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, and excuse my likely mispronunciation. If you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood, and don't assign them tasks and work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. If you want to build a ship, don't drum up people to collect wood, and don't assign them tasks and work, but rather teach them to long for the endless immensity of the sea. For sure. And then it may be very, very helpful for folks to collect wood. Um, so I would like to close with a capping phrase from the invitation, the poem I read, just one line from it, which is, I want to know if you can get up after the night of grief and despair, weary and bruised to the bone, and do what needs to be done to feed the children. And with that, I would say Happy Father's Day to all the fathers out there. Thank you.